Retro gamers. We're old people who play old games. Not that there aren't younger people who also play old games. In fact, I've been making a push to get more younger people to play old games. So if you're young, tell your friends. If you're old, tell your kids. And while you're at it, tell your kids to tell their friends to play older games. But as great as it can be to play older games, sometimes it can be nice to play something that feels new. Unless you're not a fan of modern video games. Well, what if I told you that you can trick yourself into playing something newer because it feels older? In fact, I just tricked myself the other day. In a way, most retro gamers already do this. When we go to add games to our retro collection, a lot of times, even though they're games from the past, they're games we've never played before. So, playing them is a new experience, even though they're old games. But when it comes to finding newer games that feel new and old, and whether you as a person are either newer or older, enter the Nintendo Switch. It's the console that a lot of younger people love and has even rejuvenated lots of older folks with its portability and broad library of games. I feel like I'm 17 again. But wait a second, where's the stress and anxiety? Yep, there it is. The first game on Switch that I'd like to recommend is Sonic Mania, with the goal of this list being to recommend games that didn't exist back in the day, so sorry, no cheating and just recommending the classic games via Switch Online. Sonic Mania walks the edge, or dare I say it, runs the edge, perfectly between feeling like an older game but actually being a newer game. Sure, the game is loaded with a lot of homages to the classic Sega Genesis titles, including some of the same areas and even same stage design elements, but so much has been added in and changed around, including brand new stages, that it does feel like a new game. Many fans of the classic Sonic games have said it feels like the true follow-up that they'd been waiting for, and trust me, they'd been waiting. It looks like either a Genesis game that's been supercharged, or maybe even a Saturn game, as far as the graphics and visual tricks of the game are concerned. The game feels like it was made by hardcore fans of the older games, and that's because it was. And to be specific, this guy, Christian Whitehead from Australia, basically a hero to all Sonic fans, and perhaps to just any video game fan in general that's inspired by the idea of wanting a game so badly that you just make it yourself. That's it, I'm making that Banjo-Kazooie sequel I've been wanting. Only thing is, I have no idea what I'm doing. That's a problem. You gotta work your way up. Christian started out by making some fan Sonic games, then helped work on some ports of Sonic games, and then was finally allowed to make his very own game, which was Sonic Mania. You can tell that Christian and his team really understand what makes a Sonic game work. Sense of movement, where stage design elements should be placed relative to each other, how to make everything conducive to speed in a way that makes sense. There's a lot of intricacy to all of it. In fact, he probably understands what makes a good Sonic game even more than a lot of us fans can understand, but what we can do is tell that it feels good when we play it. So, if you are a fan of Sonic, it's time to saddle on up and give this one a go. Next up, we've got Cuphead. Technically, this was an Xbox One game first, but when it came to Switch, people were going buck wild. I remember, I was one of them. But before it was ever announced, I recall people on message boards constantly saying it would be a perfect game for the Switch. A great game that you could now take anywhere. Well, almost anywhere. You can't take it anywhere you're not comfortable swearing, as you'll be dying a lot and tempted to do so. Might be best enjoyed in the comfort of your own home, where you can process the difficulty your own way. And hey, we're retro gamers, aren't we? We're used to difficult games. Cuphead will feel right at home amongst your collection. Quick little story for you. My copy of Battletoads and Cuphead became friends. They did start bullying Kirby Super superstar, though, and that was a whole thing. But outside of the difficulty, you have a game that is, well, just downright gorgeous. Inspired by 1930s art, the impressive visuals and animation make for a really fun combination to go along with the run-and-gun gameplay. A natural fit for retro gamers who tend to love run-and-gun games, and as for the 1930s art style, well, not necessarily a direct connection to gaming from the late 80s and early 90s, but most people like it because it's impressive if nothing else. I mean, you want to talk about something better left to the pros? I tried a few mock-ups myself, and let's just say Studio MDHR doesn't have to worry about me as potential competition. Games like this don't come around very often because they take forever to make, and not just anyone is going to be willing to put in the time. Even just the DLC took years to create for this game. With the amount of work a game like this takes, combined with an extensive, and I mean extensive, number of references the game has, including from games like Gunstar Heroes and Contra, to say that passion went into the creation of this game is an understatement. Seriously, they should be given some sort of award for this. Oh. In that case, maybe they wouldn't be as flattered to receive this as I thought. Next game is Metroid Dread, and I tell you what, so far the Switch has been a great console for unexpected Metroid releases, and a bad console for expected Metroid releases. The sales pitch for Metroid Dread is pretty simple. If you like the older 2D side-scrolling Metroid games, then there's a good chance you'll enjoy this. Now, granted, this game doesn't actually use 2D pixel art, but it still plays on a 2D plane, with occasional elements from the front and back interacting with you to give it a bit of a 2.5D feel. Still, the point remains that fans of games like Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion will probably like this, especially fans of Metroid Fusion, as this game is considered to be a direct sequel to that game, and no spoilers, but oh, do I know some things you don't know. The story is pretty cool in this game, and I would even recommend it for fans of the Metroid Prime games, despite not being in 3D the way those games are. It's got everything a Metroid fan would want. Cool setting, fun power-ups, abilities, and the tried and true formula of using your new abilities to be able to access different parts of the map in order to progress. I will say, what sticks out to me with this game is just how buttery smooth movement feels, which comes in handy as you're running like the dickens from these things called Emmys that chase you. Next game is Pocky and Rocky, wait, let me finish, Reshrined. And yes, I do think this game is new enough to not be considered a simple re-release. Basically, you have a unique situation where they added a lot to it, to the point where even if you did own the original Super Nintendo game, I would still absolutely recommend this one. Heck, maybe even more so. It's actually part of something really cool that the developer Natsume has been doing with their older Super Nintendo games, by not only giving them a more affordable release on modern consoles, but also adding in some new things. If you've ever wondered what it would be like to have old Super Nintendo games get supercharged, this is it. I mean, just imagine if they did this for other Super Nintendo games. For me, even just the thought of this happening for a game like, say, A Link to the Past makes me want to poop my pants. Oops, guess I wasn't kidding. Pocky and Rocky Reshrined is the last of the 3 Natsume releases to receive this treatment, and in my opinion has had the most added to it, as I'm guessing they were looking to up the ante with each successive release. I mean, the visuals alone really crank things up to another level. It's a real treat for fans of 2D artwork and animation. It's essentially a run and gun, but just not in the format of a side-scroller like most games in the genre. Some players might get frustrated by the fact you can't strafe sideways and backwards while firing, while others may get frustrated by the fact this game will whoop your butt sideways and make no apologies for it. And I mean it. I wrote the game's creators and didn't hear anything back. Can you believe it? But my advice is to get your weapon powered up as fast as you can and shake fat tail, because I'm assuming everyone will want to be Rocky the Tanuki to exercise your defensive abilities. And you know, shaking your caboose around can be a good defense in real life too. In fact, I'd say it is. I was able to stop speeding cars. They even cheered me on by honking their horns. Last game that I'd like to mention is Streets of Rage 4, an obvious recommendation for fans of the Streets of Rage or Bare Knuckles series, but also for fans of beat-em-ups in general, because people don't go wandering the streets to fight every single random person they encounter in real life. Trust me, I would know. Luckily, video games do give you that opportunity. Also, I would say that the entire beat-em-up genre in general has experienced a bit of a renaissance throughout the lifespan of the Nintendo Switch, and it's a great platform to experience it on. Shredder's Revenge was another huge one for fans of the old Ninja Turtles beat-em-up. Again, this game will feel right at home for most Streets of Rage fans, but with a completely new art style that I'm personally a big fan of, and yet another reminder of how jealous I am of people who know how to do art. A lot of new mechanics added to the game as well. The big one that sticks out to me is how enemies will bounce back off the edge of the screen instead of disappearing off to the side. Makes no logical sense, but then again, this is a video game that doesn't have to, and we're talking about the same series that would have us convinced eating food off the ground is a good idea, although I will say it might have worked on me. In any case, having the enemies bounce off the side of the screen opens things up for more combo possibilities, something the game provides a lot of opportunity for even outside of that. What I really like is that you can use your super move and get the life back by hitting enemies afterwards, so long as you're not hit by them first. The game has a ton of levels, the returning characters are well represented, the new characters are fun, the game is great with a friend as always, and I highly recommend it. And there you have it, 5 games that get the thumbs up from me. I'll probably need to do a part 2 though, because there's a lot more. Oh, and because retro gamers tend to like physical copies, I thought I should point out that every game from this video has a physical version available, and as of the time of this video, I think can all still be purchased brand new at their retail price, if not cheaper. In any case, hopefully at least some of these games will resonate with you. Naturally, some of you have probably already played 1 or 2 of these games, in which case I'd be curious if you agree with me, and either way, what are some other games you would recommend for retro gamers? So with that, leave your comment down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah, and he's talking about video games.